Who would you put in the same category of evil as Hitler? Pol Pot. 100% him. My mother, who was 9 at the start, and her entire family were forced out of their home at gunpoint, marched to the countryside where they were separated into different camps and forced to farm without having any background knowledge on farming methods. She was forced to change her name since her birth name was considered too intellectual-fancy. She worked from sunrise to sundown, and if she didn't meet her quota she wasn't allowed to eat. They were only fed rice porridge as well, so many people tried to survive by eating bark, insects or whatever they could sneak, and if they were caught they were beaten or killed. Many women and young girls were beaten and raped regularly. My mother has vivid memories of seeing corpses that were mutilated and violated. She also witnessed babies being killed by having their heads smashed against trees. One of her brothers was axed to death for asking for food. There are so many other dark and brutal stories that she has about that time. It hurts to think about all that she went through and makes me appreciate my life so much more. I'm sorry your mother had to go through that, but I am glad she survived it. Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge was unlike anything we have ever seen before. Pol Pot sought to turn Cambodia into an agrarian society and targeted anyone who had any formal education. They invited foreign living Cambodians back and shot them right off the plane. They had child armies because sane adults saw that any excuse was used to wipe you and your family off the face of this earth. This dude was on another level of evil. Whoa, what? All this evil stuff I'm scrolling through, for some reason that made me stop. They invited them back just to kill them? That is like insanely evil. I'm speechless. Sad to know Pol Pot and most of the leaders of the Khmer Rouge never got justice. Pol Pot himself died under house arrest in 1998 before his trial. The surviving members were tried and convicted under international law a few years ago. Cambodia is an amazing country with a dark history. I've been twice now, and visiting the S21 prison is one of the most sad experiences I've ever had. Surgeon General Shirashi, director of Unit 731, the unit of the Japanese Imperial Army that orchestrated Japan's incomprehensibly cruel human experimentation and biological weapons testing during World War II. They vivisected babies, pregnant women, and just civilians in general, alive with no anesthesia and out of sheer sadistic curiosity. They locked people in massive freezers to see how long frostbite took to kill. Placed live kidnapped civilians on around grenades to see how the damage changed with distance, dropped bubonic plague bombs on villages despite some scientific findings. It's the shit they did for no reason other than sadistic pleasure or curiosity that makes them almost worse than the Nazis. From Wikipedia, some of the tests have been described as psychopathically sadistic, with no conceivable military application. For example, one experiment documented the time it took for 3-day-old babies to freeze to death. Reinhard Heydrich, also known as the Butcher of Prague. Thank Duck he was assassinated. He was nicknamed the young evil god of death, and Hitler called him the man with the iron heart. When people say that things could have been worse if Hitler had been assassinated early on, it's guys like Heydrich that they are thinking about. There were worse men under Hitler who were also more competent. Heydrich was the actual architect of the Holocaust. One of the most interesting things about this is British military intelligence abandoned trying to assassinate Hitler after deciding the war would be easier to win if Hitler lived, and continued to make idiotic decision after idiotic decision. Never interrupt the enemy when they are making a mistake. When your opponent is digging his grave, don't fight him for the shovel. Joseph Mengele. Slayer based angel of death on his butchery in the name of Hitler. I read a book about Mossad capturing Eichmann in Argentina, and as they were tracking him down, they came across a hotel where, very likely according to all intel they had, Mengele was accommodated just days prior. They decided to not pursue those leads due to limited resources and time, as they did not want to risk their primary target to run away. It's just mind-blowing to me how close they probably were. Instead, Mengele, likely, died on a beach. Pol Pot killed 14 of the population. Absolute madness that they had a seat at the UN whilst he was in power. Life expectancy in Cambodia was 18 years old under him. It was ducking madness. Edit, small correction, it was 19. King Leopold II of Belgium. He needs to be more well known. I read a book in college on Belgium's evils in the Congo called King Leopold's Ghost, and it's still one of the best books I've ever read. It's surprising how many people don't know about Belgium and the Congo. They barely teach it in most schools. Fortunately mine spent solid time covering it. It's sickening. Joseph Conrad's The Heart of Darkness was inspired by the author's experiences in the Congo. Apocalypse Now in turn is based on the book. Heinrich Himmler. I disagree. I think he deserves a higher category of evil than Hitler. Yeah, he was the one who planted the mass genocide idea in Hitler's head. Not that Hitler was a good guy, but from what I've heard, he initially was going to deport any non-Aryans and leave them poor until Heinrich came up with the camps. He was the leader of the SS as well, so he definitely is worse by a lot. Hitler's original plan was to get Madagascar from the French, and send the Jews there. That would have made quite a different movie than the original Madagascar. I like to move it would probably have a different meaning. Peter Scully. An Australian pedophile that went to the Philippines to prey on impoverished children. He built an international child sexual abuse ring that offered pay-per-view streams of children being raped and tortured. He promoted hurtcore, a type of child pornography that focuses on torturing children. A video from him went around the dark web called Daisy's Destruction, in which he raped and tortured an 18-month-old toddler. He made kids dig their own graves before strangling them with a rope. I am not trying to downplay Hitler's evil, but Hitler had an end goal: to rid of the world of people who he thinks are bad. Peter Scully's end goal is to get rich by killing and raping babies. If you had a gun pointed to your head and had to tell what is the most evil, depraved, vile thing you can imagine, Peter Scully did it. This was the video Josh Duggar was caught downloading that got him convicted. What a post, to say the least. I came here to say the same thing. It makes me wonder what hurt he inflicted on his own children. Seriously. I know their faith doesn't allow divorce, but you have to imagine there are exceptions for shit like this. There is absolutely no way he should be around his children unsupervised. I believe part of his sentence was that he could not be alone with his own children. She needs to divorce this posse. Oscar Dearlavanger. Genocidal, torturer, child rapist, mass murderer, a guy so ducking evil even the other SS members thought he was too much. Idi Amin aka Black Hitler was pretty brutal. Edit, misspell song, open.spotify.com. His self-imposed title is absolutely hysterical: His Excellency, President for Life, Field Marshal Al-Haji Dr. Idi Amin Dada, VC, So, MC, CBE, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the seas and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular. Uganda in particular can't say he didn't know what he wanted. Andrew Wakefield. Hess, the guy who started the vaccines cause autism thing. The investigative reporter who uncovered Wakefield's BS has his documentary on YouTube here, and Therese also. Bomberguy's deep dive into the topic here. Basically, this man manipulated people's ignorance, fear, and love for their children in order to make money. He lied and cheated. He was completely discredited but is still worshipped as a martyr by anti-vaxxers. He did monumental damage to people's trust in medicine and set autism acceptance backwards by leaps and bounds. He abused disabled children who couldn't properly communicate with invasive, traumatizing, extremely dangerous, and unnecessary procedures to get his false and biased data. He did things to those kids that real doctors try to avoid doing to adults due to risk and stress. He did it for money. He did it for greed. He is still profiting off of his lies. He is still manipulating people. Manipulating parents who are terrified for their kids. He is absolutely despicable and wretched. When I first heard about what he did to those kids during his research, I saw red. Honestly, I think there are many people who are more evil than Hitler was. I know that you can't really put a measure on just how bad literally ordering the murder of millions of people is, and this will sound awful. But, given the opportunity, there are people who would do worse. By worse I mean they'd torture more, they'd kill more, and they'd be happy about it. Hitler is the epitome of evil because he had the chance to live out his evil ideas. He had people around him who also believed in the same things and were equally if not more evil. I get what you're saying. He wasn't necessarily more evil than bad guy X, just more successful. Indeed, he was wildly successful, from that point of view. It's hard for me to imagine how one gets into such a position, that ordering the killing of millions is even possible. Genghis Khan was the original Hitler with way more success. Yeah, can't believe this is so far down. Didn't he kill so many people that the earth cooled? Didn't he rape so many women that a percentage of everyone alive now is his descendant? Yes and yes. TBF, there were lots of brutal conquerors, but 10% of the world population was murdered in his name. No other conqueror has topped that destruction.